I've worked on and off with the guys from BCom in the World Web Forum for years. And so for me, I get to travel the world and hear stories from all kinds of people about the future of work. And I get really annoyed by the amount of generic theory and BS around it. And one of the things that drew me knowing Fabian, Andreas and the team was I knew they'd bring a fresh approach. And I was like, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of a future of work discussion where it's about action, not where about guessing. A couple of things. One, the fact that it went up first, right? We went to the world. And I think many events go future of work, and focus on organizations, which is cool, but forget that organizations exist in this bigger ecosystem, right, of life. So going like broadly into that world aspect first really hurt my head, but I'm glad we did that. And then the flip to today of action-orientated pragmatic content, because the danger with these events, and I go to plenty, is where people discuss ad nauseum artificial intelligence and machine learning. Like I know what those things mean now, but like what's the action on me? And a lot of conferences don't get to the action. And today here especially, there's been a lot more practical insights of here's something to go and try. And I think that's the difference. So the first thing we acknowledged early on was that technology is just part of the solution, right? If you could build the best tool in the world, but if people don't understand how to use it, the environment it's best deployed in, understand the pros and cons, the side effects of it, it's not a great tool, right? So that context becomes very important. So not only do we understand the context our tools get used in, but we've invested heavily in user experience designers, visual designers to say, how do people use our tools? What does the environment look like? And how does that environment vary within a day, within a week, within a month, across cultures, continents, and customs? And when you get a deep understanding of that environment, you start to build tools for the user and not for yourself. And that's, I think, a challenge for a lot of technology companies. Generating new ideas is easy. Finding the idea that someone will use and generate value is a lot harder. So for us, that's around a very quick experimentation loop. When we have a good idea, we're like, let's not debate it, try it, release it with a small audience, get the feedback. If it works, let's do more of it. If it doesn't, what can we learn and do differently? I'll be deadly honest, like we get it wrong as much as we get it right. Like it's a myth, because the challenge a lot of people see is they only see the products that make it. And we have this habit in business as well. We tend to put successful companies on pedestals. And I think we'd learn a lot more if we went to the business graveyard and looked at all the businesses that hadn't been successful and why. Because they may have had great ideas but poor execution, or great execution but poor ideas. And I think we learn as much from them. And for us, we embrace, we don't want to celebrate failure and make it a norm. We want to celebrate experimentation and learning. So we encourage our teams, go and try it. If it works, do more. If it doesn't, do less. The hardest one for me was actually in my first 3 months at Atlassian. I hated it. I absolutely detested working there. And it was really bizarre because they just won Best Place to Work. I got the job there. I was really excited about working there. All my friends were excited about working there, and I hated it. And the reason I hated it was I had 13 years work experience at that stage in very different, very corporate, bureaucratic, hierarchical organizations. And when I joined Atlassian, even though it was a cool place to work, the lack of structure really confused me. And I fought against it. And thankfully, within the first 90 days, my boss at the time sat me down and he said, we've hired you for what you can do, not for what you've done. And I want you to take all the lessons you've learned in the last 13 years, keep the lesson and forget all the habits, because they won't work here. So he set me the challenge of unlearning. Go and purposely find the things that won't pay a dividend when you deploy them here, unlearn them, delete them from your memory, and then use your free time to go and try new things. And I've done that ever since. I still do that today, because the environment I'm in, no 2 days are the same. So the minute I become static, I'm a failure. So I have to constantly experiment, constantly try, constantly evolve. So one of the things, and whether we did this on purpose or by accident, I'm not entirely sure, but I tell you what, it pays a huge dividend, are our values. And the subtlety with values is, our 5 values, things like be the change you seek, build with heart and balance, don't F the customer, open company, no bullshit, play as a team, they're real. right? They're not just posters, we live and breathe them every single day. The biggest advantage of our values is they stay the same, but our culture changes. In fact, when people ask me about the culture, I struggle to answer because we haven't got one. Each of our offices, each of our teams, they're embracing the environment around them, and it's subtly different. Our teams in Amsterdam and Poland are different to our teams in Japan, different to the ones in San Francisco, even different to the ones in Austin and New York and Sydney. And many organizations say, oh, that's a management overhead. We need one way of doing things. And they're the organizations that wherever you are in the world, when you see people filing out of the building, they all look and sound and smell the same because they aren't the same. All right, they've gone for homogenous teams, and we've embraced diverse teams. And so the challenge we set all of our new starters when they join is we want you to maintain the values and change the culture. We want them to be a culture add. And so we set them the challenge, which is you own the culture here, right? We're all members of this organization. We all own the culture. No one person does. So you can't blame or hate the culture because you co-created it. So if you don't like it, take action to fix it. And that, it sets a very different mindset and mentality around ownership, accountability, and living out the values. And it's not hierarchical. So Agility, or the Agile Manifesto, was written 18 years ago. So if it was a child, in most countries it could vote, smoke, drink, right, leave home. And yet a lot of companies are talking about it like it's this new thing. They're like, oh my God, there's this thing called Agile. I'm thinking, have I been in some kind of vortex of time where I've not experienced the last 18 years? And so the challenge with that is when people reinvent Agility and Agile, they're doing it with a corporate lens, and they're missing the spirit and philosophy of it. I've seen more of the Agile compliance regime in the last 3 years than I've seen of the Agile spirit and philosophy. And that worries me because you can put the word Agile in front of anything.
Sure.
And the funniest one I'm seeing in the world right now is Agile transformation. I did a conference the other week and I said, put your hands up if you have an 18-month to 2-year plan for Agile transformation. And the whole room put their hand up, and I was like, do any of you see that as ironic that you've built an 18-month plan to Agility? And they're like, nope, I don't know what you mean. And so I coined the phrase shorter fall. So waterfall is the old methodology, and actually instead of Agile, what most companies are doing is shorter fall. They're taking large waterfall projects and just shrinking them down. Yeah. And they don't understand the philosophy. And the reason is they don't understand why they're doing it. So the word you mentioned that I love is adaptability. And the number of organizations I speak to, and I'm like, why are you doing this Agile transformation? They're like, well, everyone else is. And when is that ever a good reason? Like, I learned at an early age, don't do something just because everyone else did. And corporates now have more information and insights than ever before. They're not always using them. The kind of biggest pet peeve for me right now is the number of leaders or businesses that are going after knowledge acquisition. And I believe that the illness that businesses are suffering right now is knowledge obesity. And my ask and sort of desire and hope is that we've got all these amazing leaders in the world, and all I want them to do is do. I want them to just pick one thing and do it. And for us, you know, at Atlassian, we've prided ourselves almost accidentally on being a do-ocracy. Like, we don't overly debate. We discuss and we collaborate, but we don't overly debate. We go and do, and then we listen and we learn. And it's not only faster, it's way more humble because it involves you listening to the response and not just delivering what you think is a good idea. So if there was one thing that I would advise the younger version of me, or advise the leaders around the world that I get to speak to, don't get paralyzed by the data and the information. Just pick something and do it and listen and learn. We've introduced play a lot at work, not only in the actual work we do, but outside of work. How do we play more together? We added something in our office in Sydney a few years back that's now gone global called the Skillery. We do pottery, artwork, weaving, crocheting. When I first saw it, I thought I'd walked into the wrong building. And then I'm like, hey, it makes sense. Yeah. I've got these crazy intelligent people that are working really hard, and they get to go and do this craft stuff, and they have fun doing it. They play with it, they connect with it. And if I think about it, the cognitive load on our minds now is higher than ever before. And if we're not mindful about mindfulness and the tax we put on the brain, we'll end up with a whole lot of burnt out people. So I think play and fun shouldn't be something that we lose in the playground at school. It should be something that we continue